Good morning, everyone. Welcome to PyCon in Cleveland. I'm so excited. It's my first time in Cleveland. I don't know about you. Yes? Awake? Yes? Yes, yes. I'm delighted to introduce Chris Schuhmacher, who's a software engineer at Fandom. Chris learned how to program while serving 17 years in prison through a program called The Last Mile, which launched the first ever coding program in a US prison in 2014. And I am really glad that he's here to share his story with us. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome with me to Chris.
Good morning, PyCon. Can you hear me? Good. Thank you, Jessica. I'm really excited to be here at PyCon. I can tell you, first of all, I want to get it right out front. I'm not a Python expert. So if anybody came here for that talk, this is not it. But I can tell you that I've always had a passion and a love for computers, video games. I can still remember my first computer, the Commodore 64. Did anybody have one of those? Hooking it up to the TV set and the tape deck drive that you couldn't get too close to magnets because then all your programs would get erased. And then you just learn to rewrite them again and just get your skills that much stronger. Unfortunately, right about the same time those damn video game consoles came out, I'm talking about the Atari 2600, that I also fell in love with, and I started gearing more towards away from computer programming and into video games. So it went from the Atari 2600 to the Atari 5200, ColecoVision. Am I too old school for anybody here? I think you all are. I would find myself losing myself in this world of pixels and levels and challenges and problem solving all within the video game world. And that went into my early teen years. And then I found a new way that I could begin learning to lose myself a little bit. In my teen years, I started hanging around with the party crowd. I started drinking, going to backyard parties, just about any excuse to get a 12-pack of beer and go have some fun with my friends. And I think everybody experimented a little bit, at that age. But for me, I was always taking it one step further. Drinking for me became a way to deal with a lot of issues that I had about not fitting in or feeling insecure. Growing up without a dad was tough for me. Realizing that I was adopted, by my grandparents at an early age. There were a lot of things for me to figure out at that early age. And for me, alcohol and partying seemed like a great way just to forget about it and move on. And I went on that way well after high school, enrolled in college, 2 different junior colleges, never completed one unit. And I don't know why I never took my early love for computer programming and video games into the tech field. Instead, I joined the Air Force for a while. I was learning Korean, so I believe I've always had an aptitude for languages. And even my drinking while I was in the Air Force ended up me getting too many disciplinary infractions, and I received a general discharge from the Air Force. So I was really wandering lost for a while. I found myself in Hollywood. I thought I wanted to be a musician. I think what I really wanted to do was just party and sex and drugs and rock and roll and everything that you can imagine that goes along with the stereotype. And then, to support my lifestyle, I decided to begin dealing marijuana. And one week, 2 friends of mine stole a 6-pound suitcase of marijuana from me. And one of them took off with the weed, and the other one, Morgan, told me that he was going to stick around and try to help me find it. And for about a week, we were looking for Jeff. We were trying to find the weed. It wasn't even mine. It was my drug dealers who I was trying to tell them, hey, look, I got this situation under control. I got it handled. I can do this. And this was just in the midst of me being lost and me feeling like I had this image to protect. And I made an incredibly bad decision. And I took the life of my friend Morgan over a 6-pound suitcase full of weed. It's something that I'll regret for the rest of my life. In that moment, I wish I could have made a better decision, and I did not. Let me see if we still got this thing on. Ultimately, I pled guilty and received a 16-year-to-life sentence for murder. I was sentenced in California, went to state prison. Started off at some upper-level institutions that were incredibly violent and racially segregated. And that was my first time in prison. That was my first time being locked up. And it was an incredibly scary experience for me. I never in my wildest dreams, thought I would be somebody that could commit a crime like that, to take somebody else's life. It scared the hell out of me. It woke me up in so many ways. And the first was that drugs and alcohol could no longer be a part of my life whatsoever. I got clean and sober while I was in prison from the day that I committed my crime forward. So today that would be a little over 17 years. During my time in prison, I decided to avail myself to every educational program that I could. I went back to college while I was in prison and earned an Associate of Arts degree. I joined a veterans group and began working with the veterans inside San Quentin to help pack boxes for troops overseas, to earn funds to send children of veterans to college. I was a much better soldier on the inside of prison than I ever was before coming to prison. And then in 2012, I got involved with an organization called The Last Mile. They were an entrepreneurship program that asked us to come up with an idea that involved 3 components. 1, something that we were passionate about. 2, that involved a component of technology. And 3, that had a social cause. And for me, my sobriety was helped by my immersing myself in a different kind of addiction, which was exercise. So whether it was running, whether it was playing tennis, whether it was working out on the yard, working out became my anti-drug. And so I developed an idea called Fitness Monkey, which was an online life coaching platform that empowered addiction recovery through physical fitness. I envisioned it as a way to help other addicts, overcome addiction, and then also find a healthier path with their life. And as you can see, this is actually taken inside San Quentin at a demo day. They had media there. They had VCs, up in San Quentin area, Silicon Valley, no shortage of startups and startup capital. But the only problem was that you can't actually run a business while you're in prison. So for a few years, my idea sat on the shelf. And then in 2014, The Last Mile renovated the old print shop inside San Quentin and opened up a computer lab. And they began a web development course that I enrolled in and I was accepted to. And we were learning HTML, we were learning CSS, we were learning JavaScript, we were learning how to build web pages and web apps. And through that course, I was actually able to build Fitness Monkey's first working prototype. And what it did, it was let people log their clean time, and it would let them log workout data, and then combine the two to receive metrics and visualizations that would help them overcome and avoid relapse. And for me, I felt like I found my calling with computer programming. we were in that classroom 5 days a week, from 7:30 till 2:30 every afternoon, learning the concepts that I was talking about. It originally started out as a 6-month program, just to get us the fundamentals and the basics. It received so much popularity. The first class was only 18 students, and 12 of the students passed with a high enough proficiency to move on to a track 2. So I went from track 1 to track 2, and eventually right now in San Quentin they have the Last Mile Works, which is actually working on outside projects for companies and receiving a comparable wage. And part of that money that they earn and that I earned while I was in prison was used to pay Victims Restitution Fund. Part of it was put into a savings account for when I was released. Another fifth was able to send to family. And actually 1/5 of the money earned in the joint venture program was used to pay room and board. So for the last 6 months I was in prison, I actually paid rent. So a pretty special day. You know, I served 17 years while in prison for murder. With a life on the end of the sentence, you never know exactly when you're going to go home, because it just doesn't mean you do the 16 years first, and then you have to start going in front of a parole board. And the parole board wants to know that you've taken accountability for your crime. They want to see that you've shown remorse for your actions. They want to see if you've addressed the issues, and you understand and have insight into, you know, how you became the person that committed that crime. They also want to know that you have a network of support after you're released that's going to ensure that you're never going to go back and commit a crime like that again. And I understand that they have a very tough job to do. I went to my first hearing in 2015 and was denied. And basically it says, hey, look, we know you're doing a great job. Come back in 3 years and try again. In 2016, I went to my second parole board hearing, laid it all out for them, talked to them about the last mile, talked to them about everything that I had learned. You know, I can say without a doubt that prison was one of the best things that ever happened to me, you know, for the wake-up call that's on my life and also the direction that I'm going forward. So on May 4th of last year, I was released from prison. The Star Wars Day, right? May the 4th be with you, and it was. And thank God that my mom and my sister were there waiting for me outside the gates of San Quentin. It was an amazing experience. You know, just coming home, getting a second chance at life. And I really felt like I was ready. Today I feel like I'm ready for whatever challenges. Even when the AV doesn't work, we can figure it out. And so I had my family support in place. Over the summer, I took an internship with the Last Mile. We were working on a learning management system that's basically packaging the coding program at San Quentin, putting it into a piece of software, and then we're going to distribute it to other prisons inside of California, and then hopefully across the country. So I'm proud to share that with you all. When that internship was coming to an end, I reached out to a company called Fandom, who had actually come inside San Quentin and seen some of the projects that we were working on, and they offered me a 90-day internship. So here I was, the 44-year-old intern. I didn't realize how old I was until I started seeing some of the young guns that they had around there. But I decided I was going to make the most of that second chance, and I worked my butt off, and I learned all I could, and I showed up in a way that I had never had before in my life. And then in December of last year, they called me into the office and said, Chris, we want to make you a full-time job offer as a software engineer. You know, and it was an amazing feeling, because my biggest fear while I was inside was, when I get out, who's going to give me a chance? With the stigma of prison, with a felony, with parole restrictions, you know, there was a lot of uncertainty. And this just helped me realize my dream and a goal in a way that I never thought possible. So today I'm on the upstream news and stories team. We're an omni-channel media website dealing with everything from Marvel superheroes to Game of Thrones and just about anything you've seen on Netflix. I encourage you to look it up. I'm sure many of you have already been, if you've done any research on video games, if you see Powered by Wakia or Fandom, that's where I'm at in San Francisco. And for me, it's a dream job. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to come here and share my story today. It was incredibly nerve-wracking and way out of my comfort zone, as you can imagine. And that's strange to say that I feel more comfortable inside the walls of prison than I do in a room filled with passionate and creative people. But I'm learning to get over it. And give me a little time. I hope to get to know you all, because I really feel like whoever I thought I was in the past, I feel like I'm with my people now. And I thank you for having me.
We have a couple minutes for questions. There's mics across the room. Please use them. And please remember to phrase your question as a question.
Don't be shy.
Sorry.
Is it on? What kind of computers were available?
They were
For you
Linux
guys.
machines. And at first, I didn't even tell you the most important part. I learned to code without the damn internet. The inmates inside San Quentin weren't allowed any access to the internet, no email, no smartphones. There was a few guys that got smartphones, but they weren't supposed to have them, so let's keep that on the down low. We worked off Linux machines to begin with, and then about a year into the program, we got Mac Minis. I heard that they're now trying to get approval for Chromebooks that inmates will be able to take back into their cell and continue to watch videos and receive course materials like that.
Hi, your story is familiar to me with like some of my friends, but I just wanted to know, did you grow up like with in a two-parent household, or because a lot of us didn't? So a lot of my friends went that path too, like selling drugs and stuff.
I did not grow up in a two-parent household. I was adopted very early on by my grandparents, who got divorced when I was around 5, and so it was just pretty much me and my grandma growing up. And God bless her soul, she did everything she could to provide for me, and then along the way, I made my own choices and veered off.
Yeah. All right, understood. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was curious for the other graduates of the Last Mile program. Did they have any struggles when it came to seeking employment, considering their criminal record and felony charge things?
I think, the program just started in 2014, so we've had close to 30 or 40 graduates be released now. It's interesting. There's a few really big success stories. I mean, obviously, I'm one of them. I have a friend named Ali Tambura who was released about 6 months before me. And Mark Zuckerberg actually came into the Code 7370 program. And while he was there, Ali was showing him, hey, look at this D3 project I worked on. And they got a picture taken with Ali and Mark Zuckerberg, which of course got posted on Facebook. It got printed in the San Quentin News. And when Ali got out, he went to Hack Reactor, a dev boot camp in San Francisco, and is now working for the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation. Amazing success story. A lot of the guys in the program, some of them are built to be software engineers, some are becoming designers. This June 15th, they're unveiling a new computer lab with a design program. They're doing CAD/CAM software So I think there's, San Francisco, there's no shortage of coder jobs, but I think with the skills that the guys are learning, there's a lot more opportunities in the tech field, aside from programming.
Hello, my name is Ryan. I volunteer in the Kairos program. I know you're familiar with that.
Yep, I've been through Kairos.
You got the cookies now. Yeah.
32.
Yeah. Yeah, so I volunteered with it, and doing the volunteering, I met many men like yourself, and one thing I learned is that behind the walls are some very smart men that made some bad choices, and unfortunately put them behind the walls. But one thing that I want to do is, once the men get back into society, help them reacclimate themselves back to society in the way that you have. And I'm passionate about programming as well, so I think that's a good vehicle. But like, a couple of the guys said before me, with a felony rap on your sheet, sometimes that can make it hard to seek employment. So in trying to help people re-enter society, are there type of businesses that are typically, more friendly to that type of situation, that realizes that people have made mistakes and, give people second chances versus being, judgmental and not forgiving?
Yeah, Ryan, I mean, that's a great question. I think they've come a long way, and I think especially there in San Francisco and the Silicon Valley, there's a lot of efforts being made towards diversity, including women and people of color. And now I think, one of the marginalized portions of society with 2.3 million incarcerated individuals in America.
As in the world, from a percentage standpoint.
I mean, it's crazy to think that they can send people into prison for all of those years, 15, 20, 25 years, and not give them any access to technology. I mean, I have a roommate right now who served 43 years in prison, the same amount of time as I am alive, just about. And now he's coming back and has never had access to an iPad or a smartphone or Gmail or Google Maps, everything that the world is using on a daily basis. And I feel like that puts him at a strong disadvantage. I'm trying to change the narrative of what men in prison are like.
Yes.
I'm not trying to say that people shouldn't do their time. I believe that, if you commit a crime, you should serve the time. However, I do believe that education should be provided while you're inside so that you don't return to the society or community the same way that you came in. I believe that some of the most broken things can be fixed. And then once they're fixed, they have the ability to go out and fix others.
Agreed.
Hey, I'm Jesse. Thank you so much for your talk. I'm curious about how people can get involved, either if they're in California or in other states, in promoting or founding more programs like this.
Yeah, the first step would be to contact The Last Mile at thelastmile.org. They're currently, Jessica's getting ready to open in a women's prison in Indiana. There's been a lot of interest in about 15 different states around the country right now. They're at 5 or 6 different prisons in California. I think these programs are necessary and they're vital. And if you really want to know how to get involved, come talk to me.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for coming to speak today. I'm over here in the a couple
The lights.
a couple of years ago, I went on sabbatical to Cape Town, South Africa, and I taught folks in prison and also like disadvantaged youth. And one of the biggest problems was that a lot of the folks had never even touched a computer.
Yep.
So how were you going to teach them to become developers in a month or 4 months even? So I was just wondering, are there programs currently in San Quentin or elsewhere that are teaching people how to just have basic computer skills so that they can even just get on that ladder to doing what you did?
Yeah, there actually is a computer literacy class that's run by the state of California, which I commend them for doing that. I honestly feel like the prison system could do more in terms of education. The Last Mile was an outside entity that came in and started the coding program, but they're starting to create change in a way that I think people are starting to take notice. And like I said, once you get those fundamental skills, then you can figure out what path you would want to go into after that. I was with, the original 18 students, and I saw some guys that had never typed before, basic typing skills. I think those are important. And all of those things will help a person reintegrate. If you treat somebody how they should be treated, regardless of how the crime that they committed, I believe that they stand a greater chance of success to get out and not reoffend.
Thank you.
Yep.
We've got time for one more quick question.
Oh, please don't ask me about Python. No,
I think he was in line first. I'll give it to him.
I was curious what the structure of the coursework was like from where you were in prison. Was it like one guy, one computer? Did you have teamwork? What was the overall coursework like?
Initially, we partnered up with Hack Reactor, the dev boot camp, and they were giving us their curriculum, and they told us paired programming. Has anybody tried paired programming? I mean, it's pretty like standard industry from what I can tell, but inside there's a different dynamic, and it was a little bit tougher for a couple different reasons. I mean, everybody's kind of like their own lone wolf, and I can figure this out, and it's very difficult to show vulnerability and weakness while you're in prison, and so learning to code without ever having access to a computer before was incredibly challenging. And then the other thing is like the process of figuring something out. A lot of guys figured, I think I want to figure it out by myself first, and then I'm able to go back and help teach it to others. Eventually, we went from the paired system to individual computers, but I found that once there was some leaders in the class, some guys that were able to pick up on it a little bit quicker, they were able to go out or go back and bring the other class up to speed. I saw San Quentin go from a place where there was nothing to do but walk around and work out and hit the monkey bars and play basketball, to a place where guys were walking with computer coding books and going into the gym to have little breakout sessions with their number 2 pencil and a notebook on how to solve this sorting algorithm. I mean, it's crazy. I saw the culture change, and it was through tech.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.